welcome to Strauss Company this afternoon for our weekly installment of Museum Moments. Museum Moments started, I suppose, as a result, as a reaction to lockdown, and Strauss Co really looking for an opportunity to reach out to our broader constituencies and to the institutions that make us tick. And so this has been a really fantastic opportunity to reach out to museums all over the country, and to host them in conversation and open it up to, as I was saying earlier, new publics that wouldn't necessarily be aware of the history and some of the incredible diversity and range of collections that our museums in South Africa have to offer. So with that, today we are very proud to be hosting the Tatham Art Gallery in Pietermaritzburg in Ntshangase municipality. And today we're joined by Bryony, who is currently running acting as custodian of the Tatham Art Gallery until a new manager is appointed by the Ntshangase municipality. We are joined then by Phumlani and Ntshangase, a veteran of 15 years of the Tatham Art Gallery, and who was appointed a museum technician in 2015. And then we have got the chairperson of the Friends of the Tatham Art Gallery, FOTAG, Christopher Duigan, who is here in his capacity as chairman, but a concert pianist, a composer and performer, and who's going to be talking to us a little bit about the broader programs and the vital institution of the Friends of the Tatham Art Gallery that lended so much needed support. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to Strauss Company. And at this point, I'm going to take the opportunity to introduce my colleague, Dr. Alexis Meredith, who has really, I suppose, been in recent years has found himself an ardent supporter and a very important friend of the Tatham. So, Al, without further ado, I'm going to pass over to you. I'm just going to allow you to share the screen, and it's all yours.
Hold on. Okay, can everyone see my screen? There we go. Yeah, so just by way of very, very brief introduction from my side, yes, I have been lucky enough to visit the Tatham Gallery, twice a year now for the last few years. It's always one of the major highlights in my calendar. I think Susie Goodman and Wilhelm van Rensburg too. From the Johannesburg office, we tend to see KwaZulu-Natal as our patch in terms of collecting works for auction, which is why we always spend some time at the Tatham. We do give lectures and things like that, but we stage our valuation days there. And over the years, we've had some memorable finds, including this wonderful Shangaan, this Van Vaux bronze that came into evaluation day about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now. It's always captured in the Natal Witness, which is always fun, our moment in the spotlight. I remember this particular trip because it was the first time I'd ever been to Pietermaritzburg in February. And I have to say, I hadn't quite experienced the combination of searing heat and humidity like that before. But yes, it's certainly been a special place for us. I think this was our last trip with Wilhelm and Susie, which we found this wonderful Battis large abstract oil. And then this is another fantastic story, which now is probably 4 or 5 years ago. This very dirty, greased up Tretiakov came in a black plastic bin bag. And when it was sort of ripped apart, the bin bag that is, we got a glimpse of this wonderful work, which had a fantastic and very much a Maritzburg-based provenance. It had been bought out of Tretiakov's boot at a local cafe, and had hung in that cafe for many years, and we were lucky enough to take it in for one of our sales. I always love showing an image of the work after restoration. Gives you an idea of how many years of cooking grease had settled on this work, but once it had been wonderfully cleaned up, it certainly looked spectacular and made an amazing price, I think. This particular work eventually sold at about 1.7 million rand. But yes, from my side, the Tatham holds a very special place in my heart. It does everything really that a musical gallery is meant to do. You know, it has a wonderful educational program. It includes its community almost every day of the week or every week of the month. It still is acquiring works, which is hugely important. I suppose more supporting sort of local artists. But it also has an incredible nucleus collection, which of course Bryony will talk about. And if there's time, I'll speak about a few particular works at the end of the session. And the fantastic thing about that core collection is that the majority of it remains on show all the time. So at any point you can walk into the Tatham and stand face to face with a fabulous Preller or a Pierneef or a Deborah Bell or a Walter Altman or a Jane Alexander. And that's very, very special in the country today. But I'm going to hand you over to Bryony. And as I say, if there's time, I can chat about some works at the end.
Thanks, Al. I think we must get you onto our publicity team. You're great at managing the gallery. Thank you. I really want to start off by saying thank you so much to Strauss for this opportunity to showcase Pietermaritzburg's cultural gem. This is new territory for us, online promotion and bringing the Tatham to the community, because our doors are closed and there's nobody there, and actually the gallery is quite lifeless without people. So thank you to Strauss. This is a first for us, and it's definitely not going to be the last. The gallery has quite a long history, which I need to talk through, because the history is what informs the collection as it is today. And there are words that are inscribed on the walls of the Royal Academy. They're simple. Life is short, art is long. And I think this is really important to think about, because Tatham Art Gallery's collection has strong connections to the Royal Academy. So I think we need to start in 1903 with Mrs. Tatham. She was the wife of a barrister. She was well connected. She was interested in art, and she decided that we needed a municipal art gallery in Pietermaritzburg. So she collected funds from the city council and from private individuals and tootled over to England. And she her husband's cousin was Sir William Blake Richmond. And so she had an in the art world there and got connected to the Royal Academy and Royal Academicians, and she managed to purchase a number of substantial and really important artworks for the gallery collection. I'm not going to mention them all, but I'm going to mention some of them, and we'll come back to those later. The first one is, sorry, Matt, if you can just go back. The first one is a large portrait of Queen Victoria. She actually commissioned this. This was, and she asked Charles van Havermaet to paint this. It's a copy of the official coronation portrait done by Winterhalter. You can move on. And other paintings that she collected, which remain in the gallery collection, are The Family of Chickens by Edgar Hunt, and a really large, beautiful painting by Joseph Farquharson of sheep in a snowdrift. She also, okay, next slide. She also brought back a number of artworks which formed part of a loan collection, and she encouraged people in the community to purchase works from this loan collection. And this work by Henry Bacon is one of those works. So I'm mentioning these paintings now, we'll come back to them later. At this stage, there was the city hall was the home of the art gallery. There was no designated space, and artworks were scattered around the city hall. And then in 1923, another substantial donation was received from Colonel Robert Whitwell. And this collection was quite different to the works that were collected by Mrs. Tatham, which were quite Victorian in nature. And the works were more modernist, and it included British and French two-dimensional works, and also a number of objets d'art. So there's Lalique from Colonel Whitwell, there French and Chinese ceramics, and there's also Oriental carpets. And he was quite specific about how the works were to be displayed. And these two images that you've seen now are the display in the on the second floor of the City Hall, and that took place in 1926. Notable paintings in that collection, there was Philip Wilson Steer, Sickert, Boudin, and then also this very, very beautiful painting by Alfred Sisley of flowering cherry trees, and also a painting by Mark Gertler of apples. Again, you can move on to the next slide, Matt. Thank you. Okay, and again, I've noted these two paintings specifically because I'll come back to them later. In 1926, you can go on to the next slide. 1926, one of the gallery's most loved artworks was brought into the collection. It was donated by as one of the city councillors, and it's a chiming ormolu clock. This clock it's substantial, and it's got a very complicated chiming mechanism. Unfortunately, that's not working at the moment, but Christopher will talk about that. The clock is over 100 years old, so I think it's time that it had substantial overhaul and maintenance. Between 1927 and 1960, there were not a lot of artworks that came into the collection. They were intermittent, and it doesn't really appear that there was very much structure to what came into the collection. But then in 1960 was the first event. It was one of the first major events in the art gallery history. I think museums always face challenges, but this was certainly one of the main events. There was a request from a Mrs. Lorimer, who was the new director of the Port Elizabeth Museum, to borrow artworks from Tatham Art Gallery collection. And she was actually asked to come up to Pietermaritzburg to look at the collection, and invited to undertake a valuation of the collection and an assessment of the artwork. And she came up with a report which had the most unfortunate consequences in some ways, because it resulted in the disposal of over 100 artworks. Many of the artworks that had been carefully chosen by Mrs. Tatham were disposed of. Substantial number of South African artworks was disposed of, including artists like Methven and Hugo Nordier, Gwelo Goodman. In fact, only one of the South African artworks, or only one South African artwork survived, and that was one, I think it's the next slide, yes, Robert Gwelo Goodman, and this work remains in the collection today. It's Valley of 1,000 Hills, which is local. Then, I think we need to move on to the next slide. There's only one work that has come back to the collection, and this was the small painting on the left of the screen by Thomas Summerscales. It was donated back to the gallery in 1990 by the Tatham, Errol Tatham from the Tatham family, and his father, I think, had purchased it from the auction sale. And I also have included the slide of the Lucy Kemp Welsh, which is a much larger painting. And fortunately, this painting escaped the auction sale and the disposal. The Whitwell collection, thank goodness, was protected by a notarial deed of trust, and so also escaped dispersal. But it wasn't only negative. There was positive spin-off in terms of reorganization by Mrs. Lorimer, because what happened was it ended up in the appointment of the first curator of the gallery, Lorraine van der Riet, and also the official renaming of the Pietermaritzburg Art Museum to the Tatham Art Gallery. And in addition to that, the gallery was given space on the second floor of the City Hall. And this is a copy of a newspaper clipping of the new gallery. And if you notice these benches in the front, we'll see we still have them in the gallery space today. It was at this stage now, in 1963, that the Pietermaritzburg municipality officially took responsibility for the running of them and the maintenance of the Tatham Art Gallery, and it remains responsible today. So if we move on, there were 3 subsequent curators at the Tatham Art Gallery between 1960 and 1974. There was Lorna Nimmo, who I think was responsible, sorry Matt, if you can just go back, for purchasing these works. And you can see the style of the works is changing. It's more reflective of what's happening and moving away from the Victorian nature of the collection. They were far more modernist in their approach. And then the next curator, there was Lorna Nimmo, then there was Noreen Desmond, was also a curator, and she was followed by Valerie Lee, who had a substantial effect on the Tatham Art Gallery. There were many changes that happened while Valerie Lee was curator. In 1968, she was responsible for a change in the acquisitions policy, and it was agreed that gaps would be filled between the British and the French, or in the British and the French collection, but there would be a focus on British and European modernism, and also there would be a shift in the focus to the acquiring of South African artworks. And it started off with a large collection of South African ceramics. So these slides that Matt has shown us now are works that were collected during the time that Valerie Lee was curator. Some of the ceramics and South African sculpture that she collected. And this was, a very important departure for the Tatham Art Gallery collection, because it was a change in, the Tatham collection, because it was a change in focus and the basis for acquisition policy that we have today. So you can move on, Matt. This was a contentious purchase during Valerie Lee's time, and there was very much discussion about whether it should be purchased from a local museum, and all of this can be found out in a book that was written and published by Brendan Bell, who was the past director of the Tatham Art Gallery, and it's called Storm in a Wheat Field, and it's available at the gallery shop. So I'm sorry, I feel like I'm whizzing through this, but I've got lots to say. This book covers the gallery collection from 1903 until 1974. And I know that Brendan is currently working on the next section of the gallery collection, which will take us up to 2018. And so we move on. Lorna Ferguson joined the Tatham Art Gallery as curator in 1974. And she played a key role not only in building the art gallery collection, which she did substantially. There was a huge number of works purchased whilst she was running the art gallery. And Matt's just going to scroll through these as I'm talking. She expanded the British and the French collections, and here we've got Bloomsbury works that she collected. There's coming up is the Degas So Lorna bought some very substantial, important works for the gallery. But what she also did, and it really was her intrepid determination that resulted in the relocation of the gallery into the building that it's housed in today. There was a land swap deal between the state and the municipality, and the old Supreme Court building across the road from the City Hall was acquired for the new gallery. Matt, do you want to just carry on through the next couple of slides just to show Lorna's, what was collected, a couple of important works collected during Lorna's time. Here are French works, and then she, and the next slide, she expanded the South African collection as well, purchased the Irma Stern, also started building on the Everard Group, which Valerie Lee had started. And then she also started collecting or building substantially the South African collection. And here are a couple of artworks that she collected. And this was the beginning of collecting Black artists from South Africa. And also, so this is George Pemba and Gerard Bengu. And she also started collecting South Africa Black ceramics. So Nesta Nala, who we're all very familiar with, and Elizabeth Mbata from Orkstrift. And then another important painting that came into the collection at this time was the Preller Still Life. So I want to tell you very quickly about one of my fondest memories of the gallery, because in 1990, the new building was ready for us to move into, and 2 weeks before the gallery was to open, we were still housed on the second floor of the City Hall. So this slide shows you the City Hall on one side of the busiest road in Maritzburg, and the Tatham Art Gallery on the other side of the busiest road. And we didn't have any time to pack the artworks, so the cleaner, Tatham Art Gallery staff, and there are very few of us, and the cleaners from the City Hall just carried the work across the road. We stopped the traffic as we went by, and we carried it across the road, and I shudder about it now. But there was nothing happened, everything got there safely, and it took us 2 weeks to hang the new collection, or hang the collection in the new gallery. We worked around the clock. We didn't stop. We worked in teams, we slept on the floor, and in August 1990, we had the official opening of the new gallery. So there's just a couple of pictures here of the interior of the gallery. When Lorna left in 1992, there were approximately 2,000 artworks in the collection. So she'd built the collection substantially, and these are just pictures of the interior of the gallery. And then Brendan Bell was her successor, and he went on to be the longest serving curator of the collections. And when he left, so you can go on to the next slide. Yeah, that's Brendan. When he left in 2018, there were almost 3,500 items in the collection. So again, Brendan also built the collection hugely. In 1995, we had a board of trustees was appointed to ensure the effective running of and continued running of the Tatham Art Gallery, although the municipality does remain responsible for maintenance and funding of the institution. And part of the board of trustees was an acquisitions policy, and that policy guides the board in its acquisitions for the collection. And the policy focuses not only on the British and French collection, but also on art and craft work created by artists in KwaZulu-Natal. So as times change, we embrace the changing political, economic, and social developments in South Africa generally. Here we have the portrait of Queen Victoria, so that I showed it to you earlier, and here she is in the Tatham Art Gallery stairwell. In 1990, she used to be in the council chamber in the City Hall, and in 1990, the City Hall was redecorated, and the Queen Victoria was sent to the Tatham Art Gallery. And we only have one spot in the gallery where she can fit, and that's on this wall in the stairwell. But we just felt that it was inappropriate to have her on her own. And so as part of the gallery centenary celebrations in 2003, we had a national portrait competition for a companion piece. It was to Queen Victoria. It's exactly the same size, although it doesn't look like it in this image. And King Cetshwayo was painted. Helene Train eventually won the competition. This was a very important acquisition for the Tatham Art Gallery because in many ways it redresses imbalances, and it also celebrates our Zulu, or the province's Zulu history. Another highlight of the gallery was, Matt, you can go on to the next slide, was Meeting the Makers. In 2010, we got funding from the National Arts Council, and the staff divided up into teams, and we traveled the length and breadth of KwaZulu-Natal in search of the craft that's made in our province. The project culminated in an exhibition and in a book, which is also available at the Tatham Art Gallery shop. And a number of the pieces of craft work were, in fact, accessioned into the gallery collection. Okay, more highlights. When I was preparing for this talk, I realized that a number of the donations to the Tatham Art Gallery have in fact, in a large way, formed the core of the Tatham collection. So we start with the Whitwell collection, and in more recent times, there are a number of collections that have come in to the gallery collection. There's the Johansson collection, which you can see here, which is prints produced from the Rorke's Art Centre. There's a substantial, we also received a substantial collection of commercially produced South African ceramics donated by Peter Millen. The Brotherton collection was also donated to us, which is a large number of drawings by Carola Brotherton, and also some important works from KwaZulu-Natal. And then the next slide is of sculptures by Michael Zondi, which are part of the Bodenstein collection. Michael Zondi is a sculptor from Pietermaritzburg, but a well-known South African sculptor. So this was important for us to have for our collection. And then we also have received some a huge collection of George Msimang drawings, and here the Vuminkosi Zulu sculptures, which came from the Shriner collection, which was a more recent donation. And then here, just for fun, following this, I've included these two images of waterfalls, which were also donated. These were individual donations. The one on the left is very little, and we were so delighted to receive this. It was a painting by Ada Tatham of the Eastern Cataracts in the Victoria Falls. We didn't know that she was an artist, so it's wonderful to have that in the collection. And then on the right is a painting of Howick Falls, which came in more recently and actually came rolled up in a tiny little, a flattened roll. It came all the way from United States, and our conservator had quite a job to flatten it out, but that was Tatham Art, the Friends of Tatham Art Gallery were responsible for the payment for that to be conserved. So both of those donations we're very pleased with. We have also had a number of financial bequests, which has assisted the Board of Trustees to carry out their work and responsibility at the gallery. And then I want to talk about community. I want to talk about our focus on community, because that's really what we are all about. We are a community museum. We have workshops, we have masterclasses, we have lots of lectures, and Alistair, thank you. You've provided us with some fantastically interesting lectures recently. We run concerts. We have a film club that takes place in the gallery in 3 sessions during the, or 3 seasons during the year. We also celebrate the local crafters of KwaZulu-Natal in the Tatham Art Gallery shop, which showcases crafters' work. And that's the image on the left is of our gallery shop, and we also sell some a number of vessels from the more rural area, the potters in the more rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal, which you can see on the right there. And then other community endeavors, we have the gallery coffee shop, which brings lots of people in. We have lots of meetings, and it's a very popular venue. I hope that it continues to be once lockdown ends. We host the Natal School, the KwaZulu-Natal Matric Art Exhibition. Sorry, we've changed the name recently, on an annual basis. And we also have the Fabulous Picture Show. And all of those are community, or involve our community and engage the people who support us. And we've got lots of friends. This became very evident in 2017. This was the second event, devastating event in the Tatham Art Gallery history. In May 2017, the gallery basement flooded. It was a result of municipal workers who had not been paid and turned the electricity off. And as a result, we had millions of litres in the basement of our gallery, which houses our storage. And over 400 artworks were damaged. But I don't want to focus on the flood. What I want to focus on is community and our friends and the number of people that actually came in to assist us. We had loads of people come in immediately to assist us taking works out of frames to prevent any mold growing. We had wonderful conservators who came in and have restored the collection almost in its entirety. We also were supported financially by a number of people, and Strauss were included in that. And I want to thank you for the funding that you assisted us with, because that has enabled us to purchase or to have stands made for our basement storage, which means that we have no artworks on the floor at all. And we are in a far better place museologically. I know the flood was devastating, but we are in a far, far better place. We hope that we'll never be caught by another flood, because we have very many early warning systems in place now. But it's all to do with the community who helped us to get back on our feet. And one of our future plans is to, and it should happen later this year, is to have an exhibition entitled After the Flood. And that will celebrate all the artworks that have been so beautifully restored. I just want to go back to the previous slide, Matt, that I've included this because when we had the flood, there were 2 young filmmakers who were in the Tatham Art Gallery, in Pietermaritzburg, and I invited them into Tatham Art Gallery to come and film what had happened. So if anybody's interested, this is the link is on the Tatham Art Gallery website, but this is the film that they made talking about the aftermath of the flood. Anyway, there were very few works that were deemed irreparable, and all the works are repaired and ready to be exhibited soon. There are a few images here, Matt, if you want to just go through them. I really just want to show how the gallery has adapted to the times in the way that our displays are hung. We've adjusted the way we create conversations instead of hanging thematically. And we have a number of different exhibition spaces. We have we have permanent exhibition spaces of one, which this is one, and we also have temporary exhibition spaces. Our permanent exhibition spaces are rotated every couple of years. Downstairs, we have 2 temporary spaces in the main gallery, and also in the Shriner Gallery, which is a dedicated space where artists are able to apply to come and exhibit their art work in the Tatham Art Gallery. We probably show about 10 temporary exhibitions a year. This is just one of our, this is our exhibition space upstairs. And you can see we don't hang thematically, we hang works that talk to each other in terms of the message and the conversation that we are trying to create. And this finally brings me, Matt, you can carry on with the next couple. This brings me to Our Choice exhibition. And I'm not going to talk about Our Choice, Phumlani is going to talk about that. But I just want to introduce it. It was, Our Choice is our temporary exhibition in the main exhibition room downstairs at the moment. And the idea came up when we wanted to use our permanent collection, but we also wanted to engage our closer community. So we asked all the people who either work for Tatham Art Gallery or who volunteer for Tatham Art Gallery. And so it's people from our cleaners to our security staff, right through to our board of trustees. And we invited them to choose an artwork from the gallery collection, which they then needed to write something about as to why it resonated with them. And the exhibition's wonderfully eclectic, but it's also one of the nicest exhibitions that we've had in a long time, because of what Phumlani was able and his team were able to do in terms of exhibiting the work. And the reason that I spoke right at the beginning about, or mentioned right at the beginning, some of the Victorian works that Mrs. Tatham brought back from England, is because which is the snow scene, the hunt, which is the chickens, the bacon, which is the painting with of the ring, Mark Gertler's apples, and also the Sisley are all firm favorites and are all exhibited on that exhibition. So Phumlani, I'd like to hand over to you to talk about how you hung it, how you created the conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryony. Welcome, everyone. This beautiful exhibition that we have, Our Choice, we were given 45 plus artworks that it was a choice of the people that are close to the Tatham Art Gallery, and some of them are staff. So they made their choices. So as you see, we at the foyer we have the people shall the people shall govern, and we have Progress Matubatu, and we have Christopher Stembiso or Stembiso Mncube. These are the works that they were made in the early 90s. So these work for us, they are works that are still relevant. These are works that deal with socio-political issues, and especially in KZN, where we have the political killings. So the conversation in these paintings, they're still relevant. Yeah. And alongside that, we have two beautiful paintings of Andrew Verstey and Emma Steen. I am grateful for the and I'm pleased that the storm colors that we have at the foyer as of Andrew. The reason for that is just that it is important that we celebrate his life and the contribution that he made in the art scene, the KZN art scene, South African art scene. So we were pleased with that. The Emma Steen, as that's my choice, and I've chosen that for the choice exhibition simply because it's reminded me of it reminded me of my late mother. So you know, thinking the next slide. To all the sculptures that were chosen by the people, and we saw that the most of them, they were figurative. So so the sculptures that are on the screen now, if we look at the Jane Alexandra, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, Alistair, sorry. There was a mix-up with the slide. So if you can go back to yes. Thank you. The sculptures that they were chosen, we chosen to make conversation with the figuratives, with the sculpture. So as you see, there's a conversation there, which is very interesting. Yes, if you can go on to the next one. Yes, yeah, thanks. These two paintings of Hussein Salim and Ian Calder, they both deal with history, archaeology, and for me, it just reminded me of those Egyptian, the Egyptian archaeological site. So that's the conversation that we wanted to make. The next slide, Alice. Matthew. Yeah. This was very interesting for me as Bryony was talking about these Victorian work. What I've realized here is that these works, they still relevant after the 100 years that they came in a collection. But what is more interesting to me about them is just that they speak about the importance of the family, and yes, and the conversation that they made about how important the family life is in our days. Thank you. That's.
Phumlani,
Yes.
please can I just ask that you go back to the slide. Sicily. And I'd love you to talk about that. It's just such a wonderful combination. There you go. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, I've missed this. With these two paintings, we didn't even think that these two paintings can show us this beautiful the conversation of the landscape. There's this beautiful conversation, which is the comparison, the composition, and it's just, we didn't think that these two mind make that conversation. Thank you.
No.
So thank you.
Yes, and I think we've got Christopher is going to speak to us next about the Friends of the Tatham. Hi, Christopher.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Matthew. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part this afternoon. So the Friends of the Tatham Art Gallery is an organization of volunteers, with a committee of volunteers who come together to organize and to help promote the art gallery and to support them wherever possible. Interesting enough, it was started by the artist Valerie Maggs in 1974. And one of the stories I like about this, Val being an incredibly enthusiastic art supporter that she was, led a protest once outside the town hall, protesting, I think Bryony will have to fill me in here, protesting that the budget for the art acquisitions had been cut. And I like this idea of Val and her friends standing outside in the early morning traffic with placards protesting about this. But it really gives you a sense that the art gallery is surrounded by a passionate group of people. As Bryony has mentioned several times, the art gallery itself is a center of a number of people who come around as a Tatham community. And this word is really something that comes back again and again and again. So as the Friends, we really try to coordinate the events, coordinate a number of events that are going to bring the art gallery into general public view, but also to bring the public into the art gallery itself. And so this is really about promoting the walkabouts, promoting the exhibition openings. You'll see a slide here of myself playing a concert. We have a monthly concert that is presented with in connection with the Friends of the Tatham and my organization, Music Revival. And this features not only myself as a pianist, but also a number of visiting artists. And the Lorna Ferguson Room is acknowledged now as one of the most beautiful acoustics in South Africa. We also have a fine new concert piano, which the art gallery purchased 2 years ago. And this magnificent venue with beautiful acoustics, a beautiful aesthetic environment to play in and perform. And it's so inspiring. I speak from my own experience, so inspiring to be able to be there and to be able to be part of this environment surrounded by these beautiful artworks. Apart from that, the Friends also support the gallery through an extensive program of social media activities. We run the website, we help with the running of the website, we have Facebook pages, Instagram, etc., etc. And all this brings a great sense of awareness to what the art gallery is doing. The community itself, I think, is very important, and the art gallery really caters and involves as many people as possible. In Pietermaritzburg, we're still lucky that it's a big town, a small city as such, and there's a strong sense of people coming together to share. It is also still has an established feel of being a very important educational facility, with the fine art department still based at the local university, as well as a number of fine schools. And Pietermaritzburg is also the home to a number of internationally renowned artists, and nationally known artists who live here and who are very much part of this gallery support. The one thing that I always find so interesting when people talk about the art gallery, when you mention the word Tatham Art Gallery in Pietermaritzburg, so many artists always talk about it with such fondness. There's a personal kind of attachment that people have to the art gallery, that it's always been like this. The artworks, the people that work there, there's a sense of, and a real sense of being involved. And I think that's something that we try to aim to keep. So many of the artists who, as I say, who live in this part of the world are involved with the walkabouts, the lectures, running master classes, and we try to bring people in through these events, not only concerts. We have a quiz evening, which also runs, raises funds, as well as various other performances which bring people to visit the actual art gallery itself. And then right through to the fact that there's so many people who have never had the opportunity to have formal art training and lessons. I'm very aware of this through my work with the Facebook page, that a number of people approach the art gallery always to, can you help us? I'm needing assistance with my own art. I'm interested in creating art. Where can I have art lessons? So again, this is a way that the art gallery is involving in itself with sponsoring and supporting the love and the interest and the development of artists on all levels. So one of the things that the Friends itself does is really to raise funds. And we are very aware that the art gallery has budget constraints, particularly with the access to funds to purchase new artworks. It's really important that any art gallery has the opportunity to stay current with the purchase of new works. And so apart from having these quiz evenings and various other fundraising activities, our principal project for the year is a art exhibition called the Fabulous Picture Show. Now here we've invited artists from all over the country, but mainly local artists, and all artworks are accepted. So we get artists from people who are beginner artists right up to very established artists who contribute an original artwork to this exhibition, and all artworks are then treated the same. All artworks are framed. We require that the artworks usually fit into a reduced size, which is usually either A5 or A4, so that there's a continuity of form and shape. And they are then framed in an exhibition. Everyone is treated the same. There is no choice made between who's a more advanced artist or in any sense like that. And all these artworks are treated in this wonderful exhibition. It's a real bringing together of establishing a sense of opportunity for people to show their own work. And at the end of that exhibition, there's an auction. We've been very grateful again to Strauss Co. Susie Goodman has acted as our auctioneer for the last 2 years. And through that, it's a very grand evening. We have a huge attendance. The sales are fantastic. Bidding is furious. And it's very interesting to see what artworks are more popular than others. And we've raised, for the past 7 or 8 years, a substantial amount of money each year, which we then have been able to purchase artworks and support various gallery acquisitions that have been required. So at the moment, in fact, this is a exhibition which is on at the gallery, recent acquisitions, and these are all artworks which have been purchased through the Friends fundraising attempts. Here in the middle there, you will see the Joseph Forsyth Ingram, which was donated, but which the Friends managed to restore. And I can tell you, it was quite a sight. When I first saw it coming in, it was really rolled up into a flattened out sheet with paint coming off, and it's really turned out to be, you can see the size, it's a really magnificent work. On the left, beautiful work by Louise Hall, and on the right, work by Terry King. On the far right, the print in the front here is by Siyabonga and Gobane. And if we could go on to the next slide, please. These artworks all came from a development project, a project which was from a few years ago, where there was the artists were asked to support and create works for a court area, justice against women. And the exhibition then produced a number of artworks, and instead of them, with that project coming to an end, instead of them being left in that the court area, they were purchased back by the Friends From left, an artwork by Petros Gehebriel, Eritrean artist now living in the United States. In the middle, a beautiful artwork by Andrew Fester, and on the right, wonderful artwork by Joy Price, local artist. So the Friends have really been able to support the art gallery. One of our new projects that we are looking at, which is a pretty major project. Sorry, 3 more artworks here. Just giving you a sense. Bryony's going to have to help me with some of the names. I know on the left, wonderful artwork by portrait artist Heather Gurley Cunningham of Jutta Folds, who's been very involved with the local community, especially with her fiber art. Bryony, you're going to have to help me with the other 2 in that picture.
The work in the middle is a work by Valerie Lee, the curator who
that's right.
And work on the right, pastel work by Tim Quirk.
There we go. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, one of the projects that we are trying to assist the art gallery with is the leaking roof. Unfortunately, the building has developed a large number of leaks, and in our very famous KZN Midland summer storms, there's some serious water features which appear spontaneously in various parts of the art gallery. So they are being dealt with as best the staff can, with catching the water, removing artworks from the walls whenever the storms are predicted. But it's certainly something that we as the Friends are trying to motivate to look at with the various authorities involved, and possibly apply to major funding sources to have this repaired. Having had the water come from below, it looks like we're now being attacked from the water, from the roof from above. But that's something certainly that the Friends and all the people involved in the art gallery are looking to support with. I think we're going to be hearing from Alistair, who I know is a big fan. It's always fantastic to have Alistair join us at our various exhibitions and Strauss Strauss days they have looking for work to auction. So Alistair, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher and Phumlani and Bryony. I mean, I'll only maybe just spend 5 minutes going through some of the, I suppose, my personal highlights from the amazing Tatham collection. I'll just share my screen. Give me a moment. Okay, slide. Okay, and I suppose starting with this image of Christopher playing one of his wonderful concerts, but the thing I'd like to focus on is that wonderful image hanging behind him, that beautiful sort of turquoise and blue shimmering painting by Alexis Preller. This is a work called Yggdrasil. It was painted in 1945 by Alexis. It's a work that I'd actually known about for a long time, but never seen in the flesh. And I remember stumbling upon it upstairs in the Lorna Ferguson room at the Tatham and just being completely blown away by the real thing. It's from a phase in Preller's career that we would broadly describe as his war period. Preller, of course, joined the South African Medical Corps in 1940. He went up to the North African campaign. He was captured there, went to Brookveld. He spent time as a POW in Italy, in the Middle East, Egypt, and he eventually comes back to Pretoria in 1943. And the work he produces in that period or shortly thereafter is very much colored by his wartime experiences. More specifically, when he returns to Pretoria, he has nowhere to live, and he uses the returning soldiers scheme to purchase a farm or a small holding on a plot, or what was then the outskirts of Pretoria, an area we now know as Brumeria, and he purchases this little plot which had 2 rondavels and a rundown barn, and he, I suppose, recognizes in this barn structure enormous potential, and he gets his great friend Norman Eaton, the wonderful mid-century architect, to assist him to renovate this barn into this home and studio that he called Yggdrasil. Now, Yggdrasil from the Norse mythology is this tree of life, this symbolic element that helps link the earthly and the heavenly. And I suppose in Alexis's mind, and this is him outside Yggdrasil with its thatch roof going upwards. For Alexis, he maybe felt the studio was his conduit between the earthly and the heavenly, or the imaginative. So this house is built in 1945, and it becomes Preller's sanctuary, his home, and his studio. And we have a number of wonderful photographs from that period. I'm showing you one on the right by Constance Stewart, later Constance Stewart Larrabee, of the recently finished Yggdrasil. It was a very simple building with a fireplace on the one end, and on the other end, which I'm showing you here, this open stairwell leading up to some sort of sleeping quarters, under which would have been the kitchen and the bathroom. This is Yggdrasil before it was decorated. Preller was really minimalist in how he laid his interiors out, but we have this wonderful painting from the time showing the interior of Yggdrasil. You see that wonderful carved totem at the top of the stairwell, and these inclusions of sunflowers, which is I suppose a wonderful reference to his two great stylistic heroes at the time, which were Van Gogh and Cézanne. I think I would argue that this painting, Yggdrasil, is probably the closest Preller ever gets to Cézanne. And a picture like the one I'm showing you on the left, the interior, he's very much recalling Cézanne's influence as well as Van Gogh's in his own new interior space. I'll skim through these because we don't really have too much time to go through them all. But the point I'd like to make by looking at this comparison is that these are works painted 40 years apart. 30 years apart, 45 to 75. The work on the right is a work called Tower of Babel 2 from one of his last exhibitions in 1975 at the Goodman Gallery. But there is a common thread that runs through these pictures, and Preller was always enormously interested in protecting the interior. So focusing on walls and barriers as a symbol of protecting something fragile and interior, and very much a metaphor for the mind or the artist's imagination. So he used physical structures like the one you have at Yggdrasil. He also used ndebele walls, and he used shells to extend that metaphor, which you see on the right here. This is another magic painting by Alexis Preller at the Tatham. It's from 1951, and it's one of his incredible still lives. He left Yggdrasil when he returned from the Seychelles in 1949. So his stay at Yggdrasil in Brumaire was short-lived, only 3 or 4 years. But after this restorative trip to the Seychelles, after which he had a terrible time and attempted suicide, he returned restored and rejuvenated, reinvigorated stylistically, and particularly the still lives he produced in the late 40s and early 50s, like this one at the Tatham Gallery, are very much in that spirit. So you have these wonderfully bright colors, these pomegranates, sort of symbolic of new life, and that wonderful little broken vase which you see on the top there. And those of you who know Alexis's career will recognize that, one of his so-called household gods that he included in so many of his still lives. There's another work on the right that we were lucky enough to sell about 3 years ago, also from 1951, very much a companion piece to the one that hangs in the Tatham. I don't know this gentleman's name. I think it might be Vusi, but his choice, I think, was the one on the back wall, that wonderful Walter Battis, which is boys swimming or the swimming pool. And I love it because, of course, it ticks every Battis box. You could never identify any other artist than Battis when looking at a work like this. His wonderful stylized figures, very much inspired by rock art or sand art that he was besotted with. But also it includes this sense of humor that pervades Walter's work throughout his career. Also, when I see an image like this, there's a sense of the universal or the archaic. But if you look a little bit closer, there are a lot more personal elements. So you see here, you know, a bicycle that's been left on a post to the left, also one on the right, and these discarded clothes on the bank, and these young men, young boys, either swimming or sunning themselves on the rocks, or just about to dive into the pool. You'll see also a little dog with its tongue out, chasing these figures across the pool. And again, it's a kind of picture that I think is a very personal picture for Walter, and a picture that can certainly be analyzed in a more biographical way, and I think linked in many ways to his many years at Pretoria Boys High School, where he wrote a lot about watching the boys swim, and also made a good number of drawings and paintings, so very much referencing that period. But these are the more typical Battis works you see, with these sort of patches of color, very much inspired by sand art. I'm going to skip through these because I know we are pretty much out of time. But the last point I'd like to make is the wonderful influence on show of British modernism in particular, the post-impressionists coming from Britain, and the interwar British modernist painters that I personally love so much. So these three works I'm showing you here typically all hang permanently upstairs. The one on the left is by William Orpen. The one in the center is Roger Fry. It's a Turkish scene. And the one on the right, a wonderful still life by John Nash. Now, these are absolute giants of British modernism. These are works that I'm sure galleries like the Tate would be desperate to own. And yet these are works that maybe aren't nearly as appreciated as they deserve to be. The Tatham also has a painting by this crazy looking man in the center. This is Stanley Spencer, all 5'2" of him, on his second wedding day, when he was getting married to the lesbian Priscilla Priest to his right, a detail he probably should have clarified beforehand. But Stanley Spencer is obviously far better known for these mega wartime works, like the one I'm showing you here from Macedonia in 1919, the wonderful Last Supper from 1920, mega works that populate so many major British galleries. But this little gem of a painting is part of the Tatham collection, and it's a painting of Mostar in the former Yugoslavia and what is now Bosnia-Herzegovina. And I was doing a little bit of work on it this morning and last night, and I realized that, well, as far as I'm aware, there were only 9 paintings that Stanley Spencer produced in this very brief period. It was a period that he enjoyed with this woman on the right, Hilda Carleen, who was his love interest at the time and who remained his love interest throughout his whole life. And Stanley visited Yugoslavia with her in 1922. And I'd say he painted only 9 landscapes in that period. And as far as I can tell, only 3 of them are owned by the British state. I think there's one in the Fitzwilliam in Cambridge. There's one in the Southwark Gallery. And these are the kind of works that he produced on that travel trip. These wonderful minarets in Sarajevo, these sort of well-known rivers and canals, and also this one in Mostar, which is southwest of Sarajevo, the capital. You can see the bridge, of course, the old Mostar Bridge, the famous Mostar Bridge. I'm showing you a slightly more contemporary view, but a vantage point that you can imagine a young Stanley Spencer very much lifted by his love at his side. And he did actually propose to Hilda on this trip, although he then called off the engagement a couple of times until they eventually married in 1925. But this painting has extra, I think, historical value because this famous bridge was, of course, destroyed in 1993 by Croat insurgents. at the time. So I think, I suppose, in a world context, a topographical, historical context, this little painting, I think a relatively little known painting at the Tatham, has extra significance. Directly after he painted this little work, he of course won the commission to produce the Sander Memorial at Berkeley, which was this devotional chapel to the owner's brother who had fallen in the First World War. It's an amazing frescoed chapel. It's never lit, much to I think every visitor's annoyance. You have to walk around this room with a flashlight, and there's always an angry National Trust lady shouting at you if you get a little bit too close. But I suppose a major interwar modernist that is available to see firsthand and face to face at the Tatham. I am going to stop there. I'm not going to talk about the Guello or the Stern or the wonderful Jack Heath, but just to finish off from my side, the Tatham is such a gem, such a special gallery, not only in terms of its people, Bryony and Christopher and Phumlani and Brendan Bell, who's done such amazing work over the years, but also the world-class, special, enormously interesting collection that pulls in works from the French post-impressionists, the great British modernists, and also South African artists in terms of modern, post-war, as well as contemporary art. So I'll stop there, Matt.
Thanks so much, Al. That was really amazing. Before this talk, I said, having grown up around the collection, I don't know enough of its history, and I think indeed there's some such serious works that I'd love to host the Tatham again for a further in-depth conversation. Maybe that's something that we can talk about on museum moments in the future. So Bryony, Phumlani, and Christopher, thank you so much for joining us on Museum Moments with Strauss & Company today. Really a fantastic example of why this is so important, and bringing museums and their histories and their collections to public. I would just like to remind everybody while we are here that we'll again be on Zoom again tomorrow in conversation with renowned TV host, writer, and MC Dan Nicol, who's going to be in conversation with Gaynor Rupert, discussing our online auction. We've got a dedicated session coming up in our online auction for the Golf RSA Help Fund. And we're going to be auctioning some lots for the benefit of some of the communities that are affected by COVID-19. So that's going to be tomorrow with this on the same link at 4 o'clock. But I'd just like to quickly say my last thank you again to the members of the Tatham Art Gallery, and to Alistair Meredith, my colleague in Johannesburg, and to Bryony, Phumlani, and Christopher with the Tatham Art Gallery. Thank you so very much.
I think Susie has something to say. I see your hands up.
Susie.
Susie, hi.
Susie, are you here?
You need to unmute.
Susie.
Sorry, beg your pardon. I talk a lot, so maybe it's meant to be. For anyone who has not been to the Tatham Art Gallery, it is one of the best kept secrets that needs to be told to everyone. But I also want to say that it is probably one of the most exciting places, because we've also found such fantastic art there. But it is also a rare treat that a lot of the artists that are still very much involved in the gallery and in the community often frequent the museum. And I think that's something that's very special, is that you'll see the Louises and the Derricks and the Henrys and the Sues and the Ginnies. And I think that makes it even more unique, is that it's very much supported by the art community itself. And it's a privilege to meet some of these giants. My first visit to the Tatham Art Gallery, I met Bruce Atwood, who used to live in Maritzburg. He's now moved up to Joburg, and he arrived with a packet of vegetables as a present. And from then on, I fell in love with the Tatham Art Gallery. So
Right. So I was asked, Bryony sent me these contact details. Please go and look at them. Also, Christopher, I see that you're unmuted. Just tell us a little bit, just for our audience that's still here, about how they can listen. I think you do streaming events on
Yes, well, yeah, well, you know, with this current lockdown, all my work as a concert pianist came to an end very quickly in the middle of March, literally within 24 hours. All my engagements were cancelled like everyone else's, but I very quickly started doing live streams, and I've done, this week I'm doing number 24 and 25. This is Thursday and Saturday evening at 6 p.m. And because I normally do the monthly concert at the Art Gallery, the stream is also shared on the Tatham Art Gallery's Facebook page. So if you would like to see that, it is on their Facebook page. It's live at between 6 to 7 on Thursday and another program on Saturday. But they're also available at my channel at YouTube or my website, which is at musicrevival.co.za. And again, it's just a wonderful way of being able to keep an activity on the Facebook page, but also to, you know, I'm very inspired by the Art Gallery, even when I first came back to this country, to see how another organization could engage with the people around. As an artist, it's very inspiring to see how one keeps oneself relevant in a contemporary local context. And it's always been very inspiring to work with Brendan, with Bryony, with everyone at the Art Gallery. And again, these concerts are going out through their page because it allows many people to experience a classical music performance that they might never have been able to see before. And I talk about the music, and I play a different variety of music, especially on Thursday. So it really exposes people and brings people into a new art form, experiencing something new in a very fresh, unique way while they're sitting at home.
Just to remind us of the time, you've got new listeners, so I'm sure
Thursday and Saturday at 6 p.m. on Facebook at the Tatham Art Gallery page, or on my website musicrevival.co.za, or my channel Christopher Duigan on YouTube.
Thank you so much, Christopher, and again, Bryony,
thank you, Matthew.
Phumlani, thank you so very much for this afternoon. I would love to see the Tatham Art Gallery back to, you know, as we get out of our first season of Museum Moments. I think there's such a rich collection that you know, we can discuss in the future. So thanks so very much for our first showing, and it's really a wonderful way to bring people that have become close to Strauss closer to our audiences in Johannesburg and Cape Town. So really a wonderful opportunity to have you, and bring our various friends around the country together at this moment in time. So really a wonderful opportunity. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll see you same place tomorrow for our chat with Dan Nicol and Gaynor Rupert, discussing our online lots for the Golf RSA Help Fund. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen, and be safe.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone at Strauss. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheerio. Thank you.
Hi, Susie. Nice to see you.
How's it? Are you all right?
Yeah, all good.
Good.
Good. What a nice arrangement. Nice. Yeah, Barry's good. He's busy working on his Living Deserts, trying to do a series of talks that he's going to be promoting soon, Living Deserts Talks, and working on, our whole home has turned into a TV studio. I can show you, look, there, all the cameras and the lights. We've got a permanent studio set up now with all the live streams, and he's doing green screen talks, and it's going to be fun. Yeah, I know he's doing good. And you guys all cold in Joburg today.
And there's Brendan. How are you, Brendan? Are you feeling better?
Yes, I saw Brendan in the waiting room, but are you still?
That was Brendan, yeah. Yeah, and Brendan's got in sound off.
Oh, there he is.
That is Brendan.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Brendan.
How are you doing?
Okay, and you?
Yeah, well, we're glad to see you on the Zoom. Means you must be feeling a bit stronger.
I am indeed. Thank you.
Good.
I'm looking forward to the second iteration up to 2018. That's very exciting, Brendan.
Yeah, me too. It sounds great. Brendan, I hope you're working on that furiously.
I am indeed.
Good for you. Well done.
I have to tell you that we laugh about what choices we make, Matt, because the Stanley Spencer is my favorite picture, and the fries. So I'm glad Al's admitted to he also likes it very much.
And that there's some such amazing works in the collection. That Sicily is really, he was French Impressionism. Realizing, I think the penny sort of dropped in, maybe matric first year varsity, when we started looking at these things going, wow, that's, a step away from, high French postmodernism. It was, the fact that we had these things on our door was really, I do feel it's a transformative collection. It's, and it's fantastic to hear it, such a thorough history. I think Al also has got an interpretive eye for, these very serious pictures that the gallery holds. I've always said that the Irma Stern, the flower seller, reminds me of a Cézanne-esque Madame Greenstripe. So really, really, really fantastic. Fantastic to hear and see.
Oh, lovely to see everyone.
Lovely to see everybody.
Lovely. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Susie.
I'm going to close that.
Matthew.
Thanks very much. Have a good night, everybody, and bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.